Reason number 46 to get a Nissan. Features, especially the ones you get with the 2025 Nissan Kicks Play. Integrated Apple CarPlay, a spacious interior, advanced safety features, and more room in your budget. Because it's the most affordable new vehicle in Quebec. Get the 2025 Nissan Kicks Play S from only $22,774, including a $2,600 cash purchase bonus. Visit your Nissan dealer today. Until March 2nd, conditions apply. Details at Nissan.
Robyn Flynn filling in for Elias Makos with you until 12 p.m. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has announced that his party will introduce a motion of non-confidence against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal government when Parliament resumes on January 27th. Now, Singh has criticized Trudeau's handling of issues like healthcare, housing, affordability, those three minor issues that don't impact literally everybody in Canada. He argues that the Liberals no longer deserve to govern. This marks a shift as the NDP has previously supported the Liberals in key confidence votes. The Liberals are now facing increasing pressure after recent by-election losses, cabinet resignations, and calls from within their own caucus for Justin Trudeau to step down as leader of the federal Liberal Party. Tasha Kheiriddin is a writer and commentator for the National Post, and she joins us now. Hi, Tasha.
Hello.
What did you make of what we saw last week? Friday was a little bit cray-cray with, the news of Chrystia Freeland stepping down. Then Jagmeet Singh drops this letter. It was not exactly a slow news day.
No, I was going to say the whole week was not a slow news week. I think what we're seeing is the rapid disintegration of following the slow disintegration of Trudeau's leadership, and unfortunately for his party, by extension, because he has been synonymous with the Liberal Party for so long now. His fate has been intimately tied to its fate, and its poll numbers reflect that. So what we saw this week, I think, is the culmination of that is when Freeland pushed back, she kicked the dominoes down, and they all started falling. And what we see now is, even after Friday, we've seen more and more people come out saying within the party, he's got to go. The Ontario Liberal Caucus met yesterday, or Saturday rather, and they said he has to go. You have other MPs who publicly, to his face in caucus for the first time, stood up and said, you've got to go. People on the wings of the Liberal Party, the sort of Eminence Grise types, are also saying he has to go. So this opened the door. It's like a snowball, and you're right. It was a frantic news day, but the opposition, of course, smells blood. They can't really do anything about it, though, because at the end of the day, he's the one who has to decide to go, and he's not right now. So
I'm always curious when these things happen. People like you and I who pay close attention to this stuff, I always like to talk to, my friends who are not political junkies to see what actually filters down to them and what they think. And this reminded me a little bit of when the issues arose with Jody Wilson-Raybould a few years ago. And it was the biggest scandal, and we were talking about it nonstop. But then I would talk to my friends, and they didn't even know who Jody Wilson-Raybould was. So I'm curious. He managed, Justin Trudeau, there were calls then for him to resign, and he managed to emerge from that scandal relatively unscathed. Do you think there's any chance of that happening again this time around?
No, because that was 2017, and to paraphrase him, 2015. So he could do things, and people were on his side, and he had hagiographic portraits done in Vogue magazine and the New York Times, and he was the darling of the international progressive set. Could do no wrong. So he had a lot of political capital to spend, but he's bankrupt now. It's gone. He has no friends in the international scene. They've all lost their elections. They've all been replaced by people who think he's a joke, including Donald Trump. So there's no one to defend him. This is the difference. And because of that, he can't act the same way. He can't expect people to be the same. And in fact, it's funny you say the average person. My Uber driver the other day, when I was in the car going to CBC to do a news hit for Radio Canada, we started talking, and he knew who Chrystia Freeland was.
Wow.
He knew what was going on. He
Great.
Said, this country has, he was so angry. He said, Trudeau is terrible. He said, we've become communist.
Oh,
this
boy.
is a fellow from Gambia who had been in Canada for 15 years. He had 5 kids, and he was saying how he was so frustrated with what Canada was. It was not living up to the promise of what he was told it would be. So I think people are paying attention, and they're paying attention now precisely because he's been around for 10 years, and people are now just, it's mesure du pouvoir. They're tired of him, and they don't understand, I think, why he doesn't get it. So that frustration is, I think they're paying more attention because of that frustration than they otherwise would.
Absolutely. In conversation with the National Post, Tasha Kheiriddin, writer and commentator. I also think that sometimes the loudest critics of Justin Trudeau are the people who never have and never will vote for him to begin with. Very often when we do segments where we ask people to phone in and they'll criticize Justin Trudeau, and I'll ask, well, have you ever voted for him? And they say no. Well, then I don't know how much their criticism holds weight in this conversation. Obviously, he's still their prime minister. Their vote counts. But I feel like in general, and I'm getting a lot of text to this effect, people just don't want to go to the polls. And I think that's probably always true. People just don't want to have to vote. Do you think that there is an appetite for a federal election right now?
I don't know if there's an appetite for an election. I think people will always say that. They'll say, "Oh, I don't want to go to the polls," but then they do, and they kick the bums out. So clearly, they want change. I think there's an appetite for change. What does that change look like is the question. If there were an election, clearly that would change to the Conservatives. And is that a reflection of what the Conservatives are selling, or is it what, Fed being angry at Trudeau? And would there be a different response if there was a different Liberal leader? We don't fully know. I think that there's, a lot of people do like what the Conservatives are selling. They're responding to anxieties over the economy, over the cost of living. And anxiety is also about crime. And so, there's a lot to be anxious about. So they're talking about those things. They're justifiably criticizing the government. People respond and say, maybe they do a better job of it. But we don't fully know what their plans are on a lot of things. And they're not going to probably tell us until there's an election. So until all the stuff's on the table, you can't really know. But, with the numbers the way they are, they're up by 25 points. That's, if that reverses itself, I would be stunned. So whoever leads the Liberal Party, it will likely go down to defeat. The question is by how much. And this is where, the Kim Campbell specter comes into mind because, Brian Mulroney resigned in 1993. He left and Kim Campbell took over, and she rode really high in the polls, and then she crashed and burned, and the party had 2 seats left. In this case, though, Trudeau's not leaving with any dignity. So it's even, it's the runway is super short for whoever would take over if he left. But I still think they would do better. I don't think they would do worse than he will because he has become the lightning rod. So, should he go? Yeah, I think he absolutely should go. He should have gone, like Elizabeth May said, months ago.
Interesting. I'm also curious, though, because Justin Trudeau is such a notoriously good campaigner that I wouldn't, count him out just yet. Like, I remember a few years ago, he was down in the polls in his own riding, right? I believe Anne Lagasse Dowson was running against him for the NDP, and she was ahead of him in the polls, but obviously he ended up pulling out that seat. But I'm curious, traditionally the Conservative Party has had a likability problem with their leader. Do you think that Pierre Poilievre is sufficiently likable to the Canadian public? Because whether we like it or not, that plays a huge role in whether or not people will vote for the party.
Well, I think that he's likable to a segment of the population, that responds to what he says. Yeah, there's some people who find him likable. Not everyone will find him likable. But at the end of the day, I don't know if likability is going to be the big thing. Right now, it's anger. And you don't have to, is Donald Trump likable? Is Giorgia Meloni likable? Are people the strong leader types? Are they all likable? To some people, they like them. Other people just look at them and go, you know what, I respect you. That's a different thing. And you can vote for someone because you respect them, not because you like them, because you also think that the other guy is just so bad. So I think Poilievre has a bit of that. I think, though, that the challenge will be for the Conservatives is reframing their campaign if there's a new leader around that person. So they're going to tie them to Trudeau. That's what they will do. To avoid what you're saying, which is the don't look too closely at us, maybe we're a bit unlikable factor. It's inevitable that they will have to adjust what they're saying. But I still think that, the Liberals will do better if they do make the switch. And the Conservatives probably don't. This is the thing. This is why the Conservatives want an election now. They don't want to have to make their switch because it's also a lot of effort to then rejig your campaign to somebody else. They would like to go now because they have a target, they have a clear message. People have been hearing it now for 2 years, and they're like, okay, throw Trudeau out. That's basically axe for tax, all those acronyms and short sentences that they use.
Tasha Kheiriddin is a writer and commentator for the National Post, GZero Media, and Substack. Thanks so much for being here, Tasha. Really a lot of fun chatting with you.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas.